Zora Washington froze in disbelief as the middle-aged white man sat defiantly in her first-class seat. The flight attendant approached amid rising tension. Security suddenly stormed the cabin. This isn't about a seat anymore. Before diving into this incredible story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed injustice firsthand. The events you're about to hear will show how one moment on a plane changed the trajectory of justice in America's skies forever. Long before Zora Washington became the center of a viral confrontation at 30,000 feet, she was just a brilliant girl with a laptop in Baltimore. Raised by her grandmother Darlene after losing both parents in a car accident at age 8, Zora found solace in the logical world of computer code. While other kids played video games, she learned to program them. Computers don't care what you look like or where you come from, Darlene often told her granddaughter. They only care if your code works. And Zora's code always worked. By 14, she had created her first app, a program that helped her grandmother manage her diabetes medication schedule. At 16, her exceptional talent caught the attention of her high school computer science teacher, Mr. Jenkins, who had previously worked in Silicon Valley. "I've been around tech geniuses my whole career," Mr. Jenkins told Darlene during a parent-teacher conference. Zora doesn't just have talent. She has vision. She sees solutions where others don't even recognize problems. Despite maintaining perfect grades and developing 2 educational apps that were adopted by several school districts, Zora's MIT application initially landed in the rejection pile. It was only after Mr. Jenkins made a personal call to a former colleague on the admissions committee that her application received a second look. They questioned whether her achievements were really hers, Mr. Jenkins later admitted to Darlene. "I had to convince them that yes, a black girl from Baltimore could absolutely be this brilliant." MIT finally recognized what Mr. Jenkins had seen years earlier, and Zora received her acceptance letter with a full scholarship. It was during her freshman orientation week that she met Jamal Taylor at a hackathon. They stayed up for 48 hours straight, coding a primitive version of what would eventually become their billion-dollar idea. "We complement each other perfectly," Jamal told her as dawn broke on their second sleepless night. "You see the future, and I figure out how to build the bridge to get there." By senior year, they had developed the foundation for Nexus Intelligence, an artificial intelligence system that could analyze medical data to predict patient outcomes with unprecedented accuracy. Their senior project won university-wide recognition, but when they tried to secure funding from venture capitalists, they faced rejection after rejection. "Your algorithm is interesting," one investor told them, not quite making eye contact with either of them, "but we're looking for more experienced founders." 27 rejections later, Dr. Patricia Miller, the chief of surgery at Baltimore Memorial Hospital, took a chance on their technology after seeing it correctly predict complications in test cases with 97% accuracy. That first contract of $250,000 felt like a fortune to Zora and Jamal, who had been surviving on ramen and determination. Within 18 months, Nexus Intelligence was being implemented in 12 major hospital systems across the country. Patient outcomes improved dramatically, and healthcare costs decreased by an average of 22% in the hospitals using their system. The healthcare industry couldn't ignore results like that. On Zora's 21st birthday, while most people her age were celebrating their first legal drink, she was signing papers for a Series C funding round that valued Nexus Intelligence at $1 billion. At 22, she became the youngest black woman billionaire in American history when the company's valuation reached $3.8 billion. Now, at 23, she was flying from Baltimore to San Francisco to discuss a potential $5 billion buyout offer from Medicor, one of the largest healthcare technology companies in the world. The meeting could change the future of healthcare globally, if she could get there on time. "Whatever decision you make about the offer, make sure it's because it's right for you and the company, not because someone else is pressuring you," Jamal had told her at the airport before her flight. "We built this together, and I'll support whatever you think is best." With those words of encouragement and the weight of a multi-billion-dollar decision on her shoulders, Zora boarded the plane that would become the site of an incident that would soon capture the nation's attention. Zora Washington arrived at Baltimore Washington International Airport 3 hours before her scheduled departure to San Francisco. Despite being worth billions on paper, she preferred traveling with minimal fuss, a simple carry-on roller bag, her laptop backpack, and no security detail that might attract attention. She wore dark jeans, a plain black sweater, and sneakers, comfortable for the 6-hour flight ahead. The normalcy she sought quickly evaporated at the TSA checkpoint. Despite her first-class ticket prominently displayed on her phone, the agent directed her to the random enhanced screening line. "But I'm flying first class," Zora said, gesturing to her boarding pass. "This is random selection, ma'am," the agent replied without looking up. "Please step to the side." As Zora moved to the designated area, she watched as Walter Freeman, a white businessman in his 50s who had been directly behind her in line, was waved through the regular screening lane without a second glance. His first-class ticket received a cursory nod from the same agent who had redirected her. The random screening took an additional 30 minutes. The TSA officer examined her passport with unusual scrutiny, comparing her photo to her face multiple times. "Washington. Zora Washington," the agent said slowly, as if testing the name for authenticity. "And what brings you to San Francisco?" "Business meeting," Zora answered tersely. "Must be some important meeting for you to fly first class," the agent remarked, an undercurrent of disbelief in her tone. Zora had learned years ago not to engage with these subtle provocations. "Yes, it is," she replied simply. After finally clearing security, Zora headed to the first-class lounge. As she presented her boarding pass at the entrance, the attendant's eyebrows raised slightly. "Is there a problem?" Zora asked. "No, no problem," the attendant said quickly. "Just making sure everything is in order. Please enjoy the lounge, Ms. Washington." Inside the lounge, Zora found a quiet corner to review her notes for the upcoming meeting with Medicorp's executives. As she opened her laptop, she noticed an elderly black woman watching her with interest from across the room. Unlike the others whose glances held suspicion or curiosity, this woman's gaze conveyed something like pride. After a few moments, the woman approached. "Excuse me, you're Zora Washington, aren't you? The founder of Nexus Intelligence?" Surprised at being recognized, Zora nodded. "I'm Esther Johnson," the woman said, extending her hand. "I was a nurse for 45 years before retiring. The hospital where I worked just started using your system last year. It's revolutionary, especially for our underserved communities." They chatted briefly about how Nexus was helping identify health disparities in different demographics, something Zora had specifically designed the system to track. Their conversation was interrupted when a loud voice boomed from the business center area of the lounge. "Excuse me, this area is reserved for business travelers," a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit declared, looking directly at Zora. "There are plenty of other seats available." Zora blinked in confusion. "I am a business traveler." The man looked her up and down skeptically. "Right. Well, I need to make some important calls, so I'll need privacy." "The business center has 6 workstations," Zora pointed out. "I'm only using one." The man's face hardened. "Look, I don't want to make a scene, but I have sensitive business matters to discuss." Esther Johnson straightened her spine. "And what makes your business more important than hers, sir?" The man glanced at Esther dismissively before turning back to Zora. "Fine. Stay if you must." He chose the workstation furthest from Zora, occasionally glancing in her direction with undisguised annoyance. "That's Harold Patterson," Esther whispered to Zora. "Thinks he owns every room he walks into. Used to be some hotshot at Franklin Investment before something happened. Not sure what." Zora nodded, making a mental note of the name, before returning to her work. 20 minutes later, the first boarding call for their flight came over the lounge speakers. "I always wait until the last minute to board," Esther confided. "Fewer people staring as you walk to your seat." Zora smiled in understanding. "I do the same thing." At the gate, Zora noticed the agent's expression shift upon scanning her boarding pass. The woman looked from the pass to Zora and back again. "Is there a problem?" Zora asked for the second time that day. "No, Ms. Washington," the agent replied, her tone suggesting otherwise. "Enjoy your flight." As Zora moved down the jetway, a sense of unease settled over her. After years of success, she'd learned to recognize the subtle signs of trouble brewing, the momentary pauses, the double checks, the disbelief poorly masked as professionalism. Something told her this flight might be another reminder that in some people's eyes, her achievements would never outweigh her appearance. Zora Washington intentionally boarded toward the end of the first-class group. Experience had taught her that this minimized the stares and whispers that often accompanied her presence in premium cabins. As she stepped onto the aircraft, the flight attendant at the door, her name tag read Brittany, glanced at Zora's boarding pass with undisguised surprise. "You're in first class?" Brittany asked, her voice carrying enough that nearby passengers turned to look. "Yes," Zora replied simply, maintaining the calm demeanor she'd perfected over years of similar interactions. "Could I see your boarding pass again?" Brittany requested, examining it with unusual scrutiny when Zora handed it over. "Very well, seat 2A is on the left." Zora made her way down the aisle, nodding politely to the other first-class passengers already settled in. As she approached row 2, she stopped abruptly. Harold Patterson, the same man from the lounge, was comfortably settled in her assigned window seat, typing rapidly on his phone. "Excuse me," Zora said politely. "I believe you're in my seat." Patterson barely looked up. "No, this is my seat." "My boarding pass says 2A, Zora persisted, showing him the digital ticket on her phone. Patterson glanced at it dismissively. "There must be some mistake. My ticket is for this seat." "Could I see your boarding pass, sir?" Zora asked, maintaining her professional tone. "I don't have to show you anything," Patterson snapped, his volume increasing. "Look, there are plenty of other seats. Just find another one and stop making a scene." Several nearby passengers were now watching the interaction with interest. Zora noticed a mixture of expressions, discomfort, curiosity, and on a few faces, a knowing look that suggested they'd witnessed this type of scenario before. "I'm not making a scene," Zora replied evenly. "I'd just like to sit in my assigned seat." "People like you don't belong in first class anyway," Patterson muttered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. A chill ran down Zora's spine. There it was, the real issue, laid bare with remarkable efficiency. She'd heard variations of this sentiment throughout her career, though usually veiled in more careful language. "I'll need to call a flight attendant," Zora said, pressing the call button above the disputed seat. Brittany arrived a moment later, her smile tight. "Is there a problem?" "This gentleman is sitting in my assigned seat, 2A, Zora explained. "This is my seat," Patterson insisted. "She's confused." "Could I see both your boarding passes?" Brittany asked. Zora displayed her pass on her phone again. Patterson made a show of searching his pockets before producing a crumpled boarding pass. Brittany examined both documents, frowning slightly. "Sir, your boarding pass is for seat 5C, not 2A. "That's not right," Patterson protested. "I always sit in 2A on this flight." "I'm afraid the boarding pass indicates otherwise," Brittany said, though her tone remained apologetic, toward Patterson, not Zora. "Look," Patterson lowered his voice, leaning toward Brittany. "I'm a platinum member with over 2 million miles. Surely we can sort this out reasonably. Perhaps Ms. Washington wouldn't mind taking 5C instead?" Brittany suggested, turning to Zora. "As a courtesy?" Zora felt a flash of indignation. "I specifically selected this seat when booking my ticket. I have an important meeting in San Francisco, and I need to work during this flight. I'd prefer my assigned seat." "She's being difficult," Patterson said, his voice rising again. "I told you, people like her always want to make everything about." About what, exactly? Zora interrupted, her patience wearing thin. Before Patterson could respond, another flight attendant approached. A man whose name tag read, Michael. What seems to be the problem here? He asked, looking directly at Zora rather than the seated Patterson. This passenger is in my assigned seat and refusing to move, Zora explained. Michael turned to Patterson with a conspiratorial smile. Sir, is there some confusion about the seating? I've sat in this seat dozens of times, Patterson insisted. She's making a huge deal over nothing. Just find her another seat so we can take off. My seat is 2A, Zora reiterated firmly, showing her boarding pass to Michael. I'm not asking for special treatment, just the seat I paid for. Michael barely glanced at her boarding pass. Well, in the interest of time, perhaps you could take seat 5C for this flight. The gentleman is a frequent flyer with us. So am I, Zora replied. And I'm not moving to another seat when I've been assigned this one. From across the aisle, Esther Johnson spoke up. The young lady has shown her boarding pass twice now. It clearly shows seat 2A. Why are you asking her to move instead of the man in her seat? Michael's expression tightened. Ma'am, please allow us to handle this situation. You're not handling it, Esther replied sharply. You're enabling it. Other passengers had begun to shift uncomfortably. A white woman in the row behind whispered loudly to her companion, why won't she just move? We're going to be late. A black businessman 3 rows back caught Zora's eye and gave her an almost imperceptible nod of solidarity. I need to take my assigned seat now, Zora stated firmly. We're delaying the flight. She's being aggressive, Patterson announced to the cabin at large. I don't feel comfortable with her behavior. I haven't raised my voice once, Zora pointed out. I'm simply requesting my assigned seat. The tension in the cabin was palpable now. Brittany and Michael exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to proceed without alienating Patterson, while other passengers began checking their watches and sighing pointedly. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, flight attendants, please prepare for departure. We need to resolve this immediately, Michael said, now sounding anxious. Ms. Washington, just for today, could you please? No, Zora said clearly. I will not be moved from my assigned seat because this man has decided the rules don't apply to him. Patterson's face reddened. You're threatening me now. Did everyone hear that? From row 6, a voice cut through the tension. The only threat here is to common decency. A black man in an impeccable suit stood up. I'm Damon Wright, Executive Vice President at Westlake Financial. I've witnessed this entire interaction, and this woman has been nothing but reasonable while being treated with blatant disrespect. The cabin fell silent as all eyes turned to Damon. The intercom crackled again, flight attendants, please call the cockpit. The head flight attendant, Tiffany, moved swiftly through the cabin toward the brewing confrontation. Her practiced smile barely masked her concern as she assessed the situation. Unlike Brittany and Michael, Tiffany carried the authority of her senior position in her posture and tone. What seems to be the issue here? She asked, glancing between Zora, still standing in the aisle, and Harold Patterson, still seated comfortably in 2A. This passenger is refusing to find another seat, Michael explained before Zora could speak. She claims seat 2A is hers, but Mr. Patterson is a platinum member and I don't claim the seat is mine. It is mine, Zora interjected, producing her boarding pass again. My assigned seat is 2A. Mr. Patterson is sitting in it and refusing to move to his actual assigned seat. Tiffany examined Zora's boarding pass with the same skepticism her colleagues had shown. And you are? Zora Washington? Yes. Tiffany's eyes narrowed slightly, as if the name should mean something to her but didn't quite register. She turned to Patterson. Sir, may I see your boarding pass as well? Patterson hesitated before reluctantly handing over his crumpled boarding pass. Tiffany compared the two documents. Mr. Patterson, your assigned seat is indeed 5C, Tiffany confirmed. Ms. Washington has been assigned seat 2A. There's been a mistake, Patterson insisted. I always book 2A on this route. It's my preferred seat. Regardless of your preference, sir, the boarding pass indicates. Look, Patterson interrupted, lowering his voice conspiratorially. We all know what's happening here. She probably got upgraded at the last minute or something. I've been a loyal customer for 20 years. Tiffany seemed to waver, glancing back at Zora with uncertainty. Ms. Washington, in the interest of an on-time departure, would you consider taking seat 5C just for this flight? It's still in first class, and we could offer you some extra miles for your inconvenience. Zora felt her chest tighten. This was the moment where she was expected to be reasonable, to accommodate someone else's unreasonable behavior to avoid further conflict. It was a familiar scenario, one she'd faced in boardrooms, at investment meetings, and now, 30,000 feet in the air. No, Zora stated firmly. I specifically selected seat 2A when I booked this flight because I need to work during these 6 hours. I have an important meeting in San Francisco that could affect the jobs of hundreds of people. I will not be moved from my assigned seat because this man believes he's entitled to it. Patterson's face darkened. She's threatening me now. Did you hear that tone? I don't feel safe with her sitting near me. Tiffany looked genuinely perplexed. Sir, she hasn't threatened you in any way. You didn't hear how she spoke to me before you arrived, Patterson insisted. Very aggressive. Very threatening. From behind them, the white woman who had complained earlier spoke up again. Can we please just resolve this? We're all going to miss our connections. Several other white passengers murmured in agreement, while a few passengers of color exchanged knowing glances. The pilot's voice came over the intercom again. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We're working to resolve a passenger seating issue. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Just take another seat, a man called from several rows back. What's the big deal? The big deal is that she's being asked to give up her rightful seat because this man won't move to his assigned seat, Damon Wright spoke up again. And we all know why. Now wait just a minute, another white passenger interjected. No one said anything about race here. No one had to, Esther Johnson replied calmly from her seat. Some things are spoken without words. The cabin was now clearly divided. Several passengers were filming the interaction on their phones. Zora noticed a few people typing rapidly, undoubtedly sharing the unfolding drama on social media. Are you watching what's happening here? Have you ever stood your ground when someone tried to take what was rightfully yours? Comment number 1 if you think Zora should hold firm for her assigned seat, or number 2 if you think she should just take another seat to avoid conflict. Hit that like button if you believe airlines need better training on handling these situations fairly, and subscribe to see how this unbelievable confrontation ends. What do you think is going to happen next? Will the flight take off with this unresolved tension, or is something even more dramatic about to unfold? Tiffany received a call on her interphone, listening intently before her expression changed dramatically. Mr. Patterson, she said, her tone suddenly much firmer. I need you to gather your belongings and move to your assigned seat immediately. What? Patterson looked genuinely shocked. I'm not moving. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes already. Possession is 9/10 of the law. This isn't about law, sir. It's about airline policy, Tiffany stated. Seat 2A is assigned to Ms. Washington, and you need to move to your assigned seat now. And if I refuse? Patterson challenged. Then we'll have to take further action, Tiffany replied, no longer attempting to mask her disapproval of his behavior. Patterson scoffed. What are you going to do? Force me to move? That would be assault. Tiffany's interphone rang again. She answered it, listening briefly before her eyes widened slightly. Yes, Captain. Understood. She turned back to the cabin, her professional demeanor firmly back in place. "Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has made a decision regarding this situation." The entire cabin fell silent, all eyes on Tiffany as they waited to hear what would happen next. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," a firm male voice announced over the intercom. "Due to a security concern, we will be returning to the gate. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we have arrived at the gate and the seatbelt sign has been turned off." A collective groan rippled through the cabin, punctuated by several pointed glares directed at Zora. She maintained her composure, though her heart raced. This was escalating far beyond what she had anticipated when she simply asked for her assigned seat. Patterson smirked triumphantly. "See what you've done now? You've inconvenienced everyone because you couldn't be reasonable." Zora remained silent, refusing to engage with his provocations. The aircraft began its slow taxi back to the terminal. "These people know who belongs where," Patterson muttered, just loud enough for Zora to hear. "First class has standards." Esther Johnson leaned forward from her seat. "Young man, I've been flying since before you were born, and the only standard I see being violated here is basic human decency." The plane docked at the gate, and the familiar ding of the seatbelt sign being turned off sounded through the cabin. Almost immediately, the main cabin door opened, and 3 airport security officers boarded the aircraft, followed by a man in a pilot's uniform with captain's stripes. "Sir, are you Harold Patterson?" one of the security officers asked, approaching row 2. Patterson straightened, seeming momentarily confused. "Yes, that's me. We need you to gather your belongings and come with us, please," the officer stated firmly. "What? Me?" Patterson sputtered incredulously. "She's the one causing trouble." He pointed at Zora. "Sir, we have information indicating that you are in violation of airline seating policies and have refused to comply with crew member instructions," the second officer explained. "Additionally, the airline has flagged your reservation for further security review." "This is outrageous," Patterson protested as he reluctantly gathered his things. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir, we do," the third officer replied coolly. "That's precisely why we're here." As Patterson was escorted from his seat, murmurs of confusion spread through the cabin. Passengers exchanged bewildered glances, many clearly surprised by this unexpected turn of events. Tiffany approached Zora. "Ms. Washington, please take your assigned seat now. The captain would like to speak with you briefly before we depart." Zora finally sat in seat 2A, placing her laptop bag under the seat in front of her. The captain approached, his expression serious but respectful. "Ms. Washington, I'm Captain Reynolds," he introduced himself. "I want to personally apologize for the situation you experienced today." "Thank you, Captain," Zora replied, still processing what had just happened. "But I'm confused about why security was called." The airline's CEO, Vincent Coleman, called our dispatch directly after seeing videos of this incident going viral on social media, Captain Reynolds explained quietly. "Apparently, Mr. Patterson has a history of similar incidents with our airline and others. When his name was flagged and run through our system, it also revealed several incidents of suspected fraudulent activity with his frequent flyer account." Zora blinked in surprise. "The CEO called personally?" "Yes," the captain confirmed. "Mr. Coleman implemented a new anti-discrimination policy last year after a similar incident. He takes these matters very seriously and wanted to ensure it was handled properly." Tiffany stepped forward. "Ms. Washington, I want to formally apologize for how this situation was initially handled by our crew. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility as the lead flight attendant." Zora nodded, appreciating the direct acknowledgement. "Thank you." From across the aisle, a white businessman in his 60s leaned over. "Miss, I saw the whole thing, and I want to apologize for not speaking up sooner. What happened wasn't right." Similar sentiments echoed from several other passengers, creating a ripple effect of apologies and expressions of support that stood in stark contrast to the tension of minutes earlier. "We'll be resuming our journey to San Francisco momentarily," Captain Reynolds announced to the cabin. "Thank you for your patience during this unexpected delay." As he turned to head back to the cockpit, he paused and added quietly to Zora, "My daughter uses your healthcare AI system at Johns Hopkins. She says it's revolutionary. Thank you for your work." With that, he returned to the cockpit, leaving Zora momentarily speechless. Esther Johnson caught her eye from across the aisle and gave her a knowing smile. "Sometimes justice arrives when you least expect it," the older woman said softly. As the cabin crew prepared for takeoff once more, Zora noticed Brittany and Michael avoiding eye contact with her, their earlier confidence deflated by the unexpected turn of events. Tiffany, however, approached with a fresh glass of champagne. "Complimentary, Ms. Washington," she said. "And again, my sincere apologies." The plane pushed back from the gate for the second time, and Zora finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. The confrontation had been resolved, but as she checked her phone one last time before takeoff, she saw the notifications flooding in. Videos of the incident were already spreading across social media platforms. What had begun as a dispute over an airline seat was quickly becoming something much larger. As the aircraft accelerated down the runway, Zora couldn't help but wonder what awaited her when they landed in San Francisco. This story, it seemed, was far from over. As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, Zora Washington stared out the window at the patchwork landscape below, trying to process what had just happened. The cabin had settled into an uneasy calm, though she could feel occasional glances from other passengers, some curious, others apologetic, a few still resentful of the delay. "Mind if I join you?" Esther Johnson asked, gesturing to the empty aisle seat beside Zora. "My seat neighbor has a particularly vigorous snore." Zora smiled and nodded. "Please do." As Esther settled in, she lowered her voice. "You handled that situation with remarkable grace, young lady. Far more than he deserved." "I've had practice," Zora replied, her voice equally quiet. "More than I'd like." "I expect you have," Esther nodded knowingly. "Success doesn't shield us from these moments. Sometimes it even invites them." The familiarity of the situation had indeed struck Zora during the confrontation. Her mind had drifted back to a similar incident 3 years earlier, when she was flying to her first major investor meeting in New York. Still a student at MIT then, she'd saved for months to afford the business class ticket, believing the impression of professionalism would help her secure funding. "I had almost the exact same thing happen when I was trying to get my company off the ground," Zora confided to Esther. "A man refused to believe I belonged in business class. The flight attendants made me move rather than confront him. I was so focused on not missing my investor meeting that I just gave in." "Did you get the investment?" Esther asked. "No," Zora said with a rueful smile. "They said my idea was interesting but too risky. 26 more investors said the same thing before someone finally took a chance on us. And now look at you," Esther said, pride evident in her voice though they'd only just met. "Creating technology that's saving lives every day." Tiffany approached with drinks and snacks, her service now pointedly attentive. "Can I get you ladies anything else?" "We're fine, thank you," Zora replied, noting how the flight attendant's demeanor had transformed from skepticism to solicitousness. The overcorrection was almost as uncomfortable as the initial hostility. As Tiffany moved on, Damon Wright appeared in the aisle beside them. "Ms. Washington." "Damon Wright," he introduced himself properly. "I wanted to check that you're all right after that ordeal." "I'm fine, thank you," Zora assured him. "And thank you for speaking up earlier." "Professional courtesy," he replied with a small smile. "I've been in your position more times than I care to count. 20 years in finance, and I still get asked if I'm in the right seat or the right meeting room. Does it ever get easier?" Zora asked. Damon considered the question thoughtfully. "Not easier. You just get better at handling it. Though I must say, having the CEO call in personally to intervene, that's a new one." He chuckled softly. You must be someone special. I'm just a person who wanted to sit in her assigned seat, Zora replied. A person whose face is currently trending on Twitter, Damon countered, showing her his phone screen. Zora's stomach tightened as she saw the hashtag #seatstolen climbing the trending list, accompanied by video clips from multiple angles of her confrontation with Patterson. Her phone, now in airplane mode, couldn't receive the notifications surely piling up, but she could imagine Jamal was already trying to reach her. As if on cue, the plane's Wi-Fi connected, and her tablet chimed with an incoming message from Jamal, "You've gone viral. Are you okay? Media asking for statements. Call when you land." I never wanted this kind of attention, Zora said quietly, more to herself than to her companions. None of us do, Damon replied. But sometimes these moments choose us rather than the other way around. Esther patted Zora's hand gently. Every generation needs its catalysts for change. In my day, we fought for the right to sit anywhere on the bus. Now you're fighting for the right to sit in the seat you earned through your success. The battlefield changes, but the war remains the same. Zora's tablet chimed again with a direct message from Alexandra Bennett, Medicorp's CEO, "Just saw what happened on your flight. Appalling treatment. Looking forward to our meeting even more now. We need voices like yours in healthcare technology leadership." The message should have been encouraging. The CEO of the company offering to buy her business for $5 billion was expressing support, but something about the timing felt opportunistic. Would Bennett have reached out if the videos hadn't gone viral? Was Zora now more valuable to Medicorp as a symbol than as an innovator? Something troubling you? Esther asked, noticing Zora's expression. Just thinking about how success hasn't shielded me from discrimination like I once thought it would, Zora admitted. When I was younger, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, people would see past my race and gender to my abilities. But the more successful I've become, the more I've realized that for some people, my achievements only make them more determined to put me in my place. Damon nodded in understanding. Success changes the nature of the discrimination, but rarely eliminates it. Instead of, "You don't belong here," it becomes, "How did you really get here?" Exactly, Zora agreed. And now I have to decide whether to file a formal complaint against the airline or just focus on my business. Part of me wants to let it go and concentrate on the Medicorp meeting, but another part feels responsible to address what happened so maybe the next person doesn't face the same treatment. That's always the dilemma, isn't it? Esther said. Taking care of business versus taking care of the community. In my experience, they're rarely entirely separate concerns. As the flight continued its journey westward, Zora alternated between preparing for her meeting and reading the flood of messages coming in from friends, colleagues, and increasingly, media outlets requesting comments about the incident. Her grandmother called twice, leaving voicemails expressing both concern and fierce pride. By the time the captain announced their initial descent into San Francisco, Zora had made a decision. This incident, unwelcome as it was, had given her a platform. The question now was how to use it effectively, not just for herself, but for all those who didn't have billions of dollars and social media virality to amplify their voices when facing similar injustice. As the California coastline came into view, Zora turned to Esther. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful our paths crossed today. Divine timing, Esther replied with a knowing smile. Sometimes the universe puts the right people in the right place at exactly the right moment. Whether by divine timing or sheer coincidence, Zora couldn't deny that something significant had shifted during those tense minutes on the tarmac in Baltimore. What had begun as a simple dispute over an airline seat had transformed into something that might have implications far beyond this 6-hour flight. The aircraft touched down at San Francisco International Airport with a gentle bump, followed by the familiar sound of reverse thrusters and collective unbuckling of seatbelts despite the captain's instructions to remain seated. As Zora gathered her belongings, Tiffany approached with an unusually concerned expression. "Ms. Washington, I've been informed that there are several reporters waiting at the gate," she said quietly. Airline management has arranged for you to deplane first and be escorted through a private exit if you prefer to avoid them. Zora hesitated, surprised by the airline's sudden solicitude. Thank you. Yes, I'd appreciate that. I'll be right behind you, honey, Esther assured her. Make them wait for any statement until you've had time to think. After a brief goodbye to Damon Wright, who exchanged business cards with her, Zora followed Tiffany to the front of the aircraft. As the door opened, a stern-looking woman in an airline management uniform greeted her. Ms. Washington, I'm Diana Cooper, Customer Service Director for the airline at San Francisco Airport. Please follow me. They moved swiftly through the jetway and into a service corridor, bypassing the main terminal where, through a briefly opened door, Zora glimpsed a cluster of people with cameras and microphones. Diana led her to a private airline lounge where two people in business attire waited expectantly. Ms. Washington, I'm Trevor Phillips and this is Samantha Liu, the man introduced them. We're from Medicorp. Ms. Bennett sent us to meet you and escort you directly to our headquarters. Your meeting isn't for another 3 hours, Samantha added. But Alexandra thought you might appreciate avoiding the media situation and having some time to refresh at our executive suite before the formal discussions. Zora's phone rang before she could respond, her grandmother's ringtone. Excuse me, I need to take this. She stepped aside, answering the call. Grandma, I'm fine. Zora Elaine Washington, Darlene's voice came through with the same mixture of concern and authority it had carried since Zora was 8 years old. I'm watching you on the national news right now. CNN is showing video of that man refusing to give you your seat. It's being blown out of proportion, Zora tried to downplay the situation. No, it is not, her grandmother countered firmly. I raised you to stand your ground, and that's exactly what you did. I'm proud of you, baby. But now you've got to be careful. When they can't stop you from taking your rightful place, they'll try to control how your story gets told. As if to emphasize her grandmother's point, Zora's other line beeped with an incoming video call from Jamal. Grandma, I need to take this call from Jamal. I'll call you back soon, I promise. Switching calls, she found Jamal looking unusually serious. Zora, where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine, just arrived in San Francisco. Medicorp sent people to meet me. I bet they did, Jamal replied, his tone skeptical. Listen, I've got our legal team on the other line. This airline incident has exploded. Every major news outlet is covering it. Our PR team is fielding calls non-stop. What are they saying? Zora asked, moving further away from the Medicorp representatives who were trying to appear like they weren't listening. It's mixed. Some are framing it as another example of everyday discrimination. Others are spinning it as, privileged billionaire causes flight delay over seat assignment. The airline stock dropped 2% in the last hour. They've issued a formal apology, but it's generic corporate speak. And Patterson? Jamal's expression hardened. That's where it gets interesting. He's been identified in the financial press as a former advisor with a history of client complaints. Apparently, he lost his license 3 years ago for ethical violations. Someone's already connected him to a competitor of Medicorp, Helix Health. Zora processed this information, her analytical mind quickly making connections. You think this wasn't random? That he targeted me specifically? I think we can't rule it out, Jamal replied cautiously. The timing is suspicious. The day you're flying to discuss a potential $5 billion deal with Medicorp, you just happen to have a confrontation with someone connected to their competitor. Zora's tablet chimed with notifications of multiple social media tags. A quick glance showed that hashtag Zora Washington was now trending alongside hashtag Seat Stolen, with prominent civil rights activists, celebrities, and business leaders weighing in on the incident. What should I do? Zora asked, feeling suddenly overwhelmed by the rapidly escalating situation. First, don't sign anything or make any statements until we've had time to strategize, Jamal advised. Second, I'm booking a flight out there now. I'll be there by tonight. Third, consider whether you want to reschedule the Medicorps meeting. Alexandra Bennett already messaged me about the incident, Zora informed him. They've clearly seen the videos. Of course they have, Jamal replied. And now they know you have even more leverage in the negotiations. Just be careful, Z. Everyone's going to try to use this situation for their own agenda, the airline, Medicorps, our competitors, the media. You need to decide what your agenda is. Their conversation was interrupted by Diana Cooper approaching tentatively. Ms. Washington, I apologize for the interruption, but our CEO, Vincent Coleman, is on the line and would like to speak with you personally. Jamal, having overheard this, raised his eyebrows. Put him on speaker and don't agree to anything, he whispered before ending their call. Vincent Coleman's voice came through clearly on Diana's phone. Ms. Washington, this is Vincent Coleman. First, let me personally apologize for the inexcusable experience you had on our aircraft today. I've reviewed the videos myself and have already taken steps to address the failures in how our crew initially handled the situation. I appreciate that, Mr. Coleman, Zora replied cautiously. I understand you're likely still processing this incident, but I wanted to inform you personally that we've initiated an internal investigation, and the flight attendants involved have been placed on administrative leave pending review. Additionally, Mr. Patterson has been permanently banned from flying with our airline. That's thorough, Zora commented, somewhat surprised by the swift action. Discrimination has no place on our aircraft, Coleman continued. We'd like to offer you our sincere apologies along with lifetime premium status and unlimited first-class upgrades on any of our routes. The offer was generous, worth tens of thousands of dollars in practical terms, but Zora sensed it was also a preemptive move to avoid potential litigation. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Coleman. I'll need some time to consider it. This isn't just about me or one incident. Of course, Coleman replied smoothly. Take all the time you need. We're committed to making this right. As the call ended, Zora noticed the Medicorps representatives exchanging glances. The airline's rapid damage control suggested they recognized the potential legal and public relations disaster unfolding. Samantha approached with renewed professionalism. The car is ready whenever you are, Ms. Washington. We completely understand if you'd prefer to reschedule today's meeting. No, Zora decided. The meeting proceeds as planned. But I'll need 30 minutes alone before we leave for your headquarters. Once they stepped outside to wait, Zora used the privacy to call her grandmother back. Grandma, things are happening so fast, she admitted, allowing vulnerability to show in her voice for the first time since the incident began. Take a deep breath, child, Darlene instructed. Remember what I always told you. Zora closed her eyes, recalling her grandmother's wisdom. Our successes and our struggles are never just our own. That's right, Darlene confirmed. What happened to you today has happened to countless others who didn't have cameras recording or CEOs apologizing afterward. Whatever you decide to do next, remember you're deciding for them too. As Zora ended the call, a new message appeared on her tablet, an email from civil rights attorney Gabrielle Hansen, whose reputation for taking on corporations in discrimination cases was legendary. Ms. Washington, the email began, I've represented 3 other individuals who experienced similar treatment on this same airline route. I believe what happened to you today is part of a pattern, not an isolated incident. If you're willing, I'd like to discuss how we might address this systematically. This isn't just about one seat or one flight. Outside the lounge windows, Zora could see the San Francisco skyline in the distance, including the distinctive Medicorps Tower where, in a few hours, she would discuss the potential sale of her company, the company she and Jamal had built from nothing, against all odds and expectations. What had begun as a routine business trip had transformed into something much more complex and consequential. As Zora gathered her belongings to meet the waiting Medicorps representatives, she knew the decisions she made in the next 24 hours would affect far more than just her business future. The Medicorps headquarters dominated the San Francisco skyline, 68 stories of gleaming glass and steel housing one of the world's largest healthcare technology companies. As the elevator ascended to the executive floor, Zora found herself studying her reflection in the mirrored walls, ensuring her composed exterior betrayed none of the turmoil she felt inside. "Ms. Bennett is very excited to meet you," Trevor Phillips remarked as they approached the executive suite. Even before today's events, the subtle emphasis wasn't lost on Zora. Everything now existed in relation to the incident, before it or after it, as though those few minutes on the aircraft had created a dividing line in her professional life. Alexandra Bennett rose from behind an impressive desk as Zora entered. Tall and poised, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a sleek chignon, Bennett projected exactly the image expected of a woman who had broken multiple glass ceilings in the tech industry. "Zora Washington," she greeted warmly, extending her hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for months. Though I must say, I didn't anticipate the circumstances would be quite so dramatic." "Neither did I," Zora replied evenly. "Please, sit," Bennett gestured to a seating area by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be fine, thank you." As a secretary delivered drinks, Bennett dismissed Trevor and Samantha with a subtle nod. Once they were alone, her professional smile softened into something more genuine. "Before we discuss business, I want to say personally how disturbed I was by what happened on your flight," Bennett said. "In my 30 years in corporate America, I've experienced my share of discrimination, though admittedly not as publicly or blatantly." "Thank you," Zora acknowledged, appreciating what seemed like sincere empathy. "Now," Bennett continued, her tone shifting back to business, "I believe we both know why we're here. Medicore wants to acquire Nexus Intelligence, and we've made what we consider a very generous initial offer of $5 billion. "It is generous," Zora agreed. "Though Nexus's projected growth suggests we could be worth substantially more in 2 to 3 years. Bennett smiled appreciatively. "Direct. I like that." She reached for a folder on the coffee table between them. "In light of recent developments, I'm authorized to increase our offer to $7 billion, with additional performance incentives that could bring the total to $8.5 billion over 3 years. Zora carefully maintained her neutral expression despite her surprise at the significant increase. "That's certainly a compelling revision. We believe it reflects both the current value of your technology and its future potential under Medicore's global infrastructure," Bennett explained. She slid the folder across to Zora. "The full terms are outlined here, but I can summarize the key points." As Bennett detailed the acquisition structure, Zora skimmed through the document, her trained eye catching on specific clauses and conditions. One paragraph on page 17 caused her to pause. "This non-disclosure agreement covers all matters pertaining to the business relationship between parties, including any personal experiences or incidents occurring during the negotiation process," Zora read aloud. "That seems unusually broad." Bennett's smile remained unchanged. "Standard language for acquisitions of this magnitude. It protects both parties from having internal discussions become public fodder. It would also prevent me from discussing today's incident on the aircraft in any context that might relate to Medicore," Zora observed. "That's one interpretation," Bennett conceded. "Though I assure you that wasn't the specific intent." Zora continued reading, finding several other clauses that raised concerns: restrictions on her ability to develop new healthcare AI technologies for 5 years after the acquisition, limitations on her public advocacy regarding algorithmic bias in healthcare, mandatory approval of her public statements related to technology ethics. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind: "When they can't stop you from taking your rightful place, they'll try to control how your story gets told." "Alexandra," Zora said finally, closing the folder, "this offer is extremely generous financially, but these terms would essentially silence me on issues I'm deeply passionate about." Bennett leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Zora, you have to understand our position. Medicore is a publicly traded company with stakeholders, board members, and partners worldwide. We need consistency in our messaging. Even if that means covering up discrimination? Zora asked pointedly. That's not fair, Bennett protested. We're one of the most progressive companies in healthcare. 38% of our leadership team are people of color. We've invested millions in health equity initiatives. And yet, these terms would prevent me from speaking about my own experiences if they might reflect poorly on Medicorp or its partners, Zora countered. Including airlines you have corporate accounts with. A brief flash of calculation crossed Bennett's face before her professional mask returned. Perhaps we could modify some of these clauses to address your specific concerns. Zora's phone vibrated with an incoming call, Jamal's second attempt in 10 minutes. Excuse me, I need to take this. Stepping to the far side of the expansive office, Zora answered. What is it, Jamal? Zora, have you signed anything? He asked urgently. No, why? Thank God, Jamal sighed in relief. Gabrielle Hansen just called me. She's identified 3 other passengers who experienced almost identical treatment on that same airline route in the past year. All black professionals, all with assigned first-class seats, all told to move to accommodate white passengers who claimed their seats. The airline settled privately with 2 of them. Zora glanced back at Bennett, who was pretending not to listen while checking her tablet. And the third? Took a different seat when pressured, just like you nearly had to do. But she documented everything. Hansen thinks there's enough for a class action focusing on systematic discrimination in their seating practices. That changes things, Zora said quietly. There's more, Jamal continued. That guy, Patterson. He used to work for Helix Health, but he's been on Medicorp's payroll as a consultant for the past 8 months. Zora felt a cold clarity wash over her. Are you certain? Completely. His LinkedIn profile was just scrubbed, but we have screenshots. This whole thing stinks, Z. I need to call you back, Zora said, ending the call and returning to the seating area where Bennett waited with practiced patience. Everything all right? Bennett inquired. Alexandra, Zora began carefully, what can you tell me about Harold Patterson? Bennett's expression didn't change, but a slight tension appeared around her eyes. I'm not familiar with the name. Should I be? He's the man who took my seat today, Zora explained. The man who said people like me don't belong in first class. The man who, until recently, was listed as a consultant for Medicorp. This time, Bennett couldn't quite maintain her composure. A flicker of alarm crossed her features before she recovered. That's... I wasn't aware of any connection. He must be a contractor through one of our agencies. We have thousands. Zora stood slowly. I think we should reschedule this meeting. I need time to review your offer more thoroughly with my team. Bennett rose as well, abandoning pretense. Zora, whatever you think is happening here, I assure you Medicorp had nothing to do with that unfortunate incident. But you should consider how this situation could benefit both of us. Your profile has never been higher than it is right now. Together, we could turn this negative experience into a powerful platform for change. Within the proper corporate framework, of course. And that framework would include me signing away my right to discuss what happened today except in terms approved by Medicorp, Zora concluded. Business is business, Bennett stated flatly. $7 billion buys a certain level of discretion. As Zora gathered her belongings, her tablet chimed with another notification. A message from Esther Johnson, before you make any decisions, call me. There's something you should know. Zora looked back at Alexandra Bennett, a woman who had navigated her own path through the tech industry's minefields of sexism and bias to reach its pinnacle. For a brief moment, Zora had seen her as a potential ally. Now she wondered if success at Bennett's level required compromises she wasn't willing to make. I'll be in touch, Alexandra, Zora said finally. But I should warn you, I've never been particularly good at staying in the seat others have assigned me. As the elevator descended from the executive floor, Zora felt a strange lightness despite the complexity of her situation. Her grandmother had always told her that true clarity often came in moments of crisis. Standing in seat 2A, refusing to move despite pressure and judgment, she had reclaimed something essential that success and wealth had subtly eroded, the certainty that her dignity was not negotiable, regardless of the price offered for it. The elevator doors opened, and Zora stepped out into the lobby, already dialing Esther Johnson's number. Whatever happened next, she would face it on her own terms, in her own voice, from her own rightful place. 6 weeks after the incident that became known across social media as #SeatStolen, Zora Washington stood before a bank of microphones in the grand ballroom of the Baltimore Convention Center. Camera flashes punctuated the hushed anticipation as journalists from national news outlets, industry publications, and international media waited for her statement. Jamal Taylor stood supportively at her right, while attorney Gabrielle Hansen flanked her left. In the front row sat Darlene Washington, her grandmother's proud gaze never wavering from the granddaughter she had raised to stand her ground. "Good morning," Zora began, her voice clear and steady. "Thank you all for coming. 6 weeks ago, I boarded a flight from Baltimore to San Francisco and encountered discrimination that has since been viewed by millions online. Today, I want to address not just what happened on that flight, but the systemic issues it represents and the changes we must make going forward." The room fell completely silent as Zora continued. "I am announcing today that I am filing a class action lawsuit against national airlines, focusing not on my individual experience, but on a pattern of discriminatory practices that have affected many travelers. Through Attorney Hansen's investigation, we have identified 17 individuals who experienced similar discrimination on this airline within the past 2 years, forced or pressured to give up their rightfully assigned seats based on their race." Gabrielle Hansen stepped forward to provide additional context. "This lawsuit isn't about monetary damages for Ms. Washington personally. It seeks systematic changes in training, accountability, and transparency in how airlines handle seating disputes that have discriminatory elements." Zora returned to the microphone. "Additionally, I am announcing that Nexus Intelligence will not be acquired by Medicorp or any other company at this time. We have declined their revised offer of $7 billion because maintaining our independence allows us to pursue projects aligned with our core mission without corporate constraints." Murmurs rippled through the assembled journalists at this revelation. Turning down what would have been one of the largest tech acquisitions of the year was unexpected news. Instead, Zora continued, "Nexus is launching 3 new initiatives today that directly address discrimination in both transportation and healthcare technology." She outlined each initiative: a new AI application designed to help transportation companies identify patterns of bias in their customer service interactions, a $20 million scholarship program for Black students pursuing careers in artificial intelligence and healthcare technology, and a research partnership with 3 historically Black colleges to develop new algorithms that would reduce racial disparities in medical diagnostics. Finally, Zora said, her voice softening slightly, "I want to address something personal. When that incident occurred on the airplane, I had a choice to make: accept the injustice quietly to avoid conflict, or stand firm despite the pressure and judgment from those around me. That same choice faces many people every day in situations that aren't recorded or publicized." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "To anyone who has ever been told they don't belong in the seat they've rightfully earned, whether in an aircraft, a classroom, a boardroom, or any other space, I want you to know that your dignity is not negotiable. Your right to occupy your space is not dependent on others' comfort with your presence." The press conference continued with questions from reporters, during which several significant revelations emerged. National airlines had already implemented new anti-discrimination training for all flight staff, with input from civil rights organizations. Harold Patterson's connections to both Medicorp and their competitor Helix Health had been confirmed. He had been hired through a third-party firm to engage in corporate espionage, though both companies denied knowledge of his specific actions on the flight. Perhaps most surprisingly, Esther Johnson was introduced during the question period, revealed to be not just a retired nurse but a former civil rights activist who had participated in lunch counter sit-ins during the 1960s. She had been documenting discriminatory incidents in commercial air travel for the past 5 years, collecting evidence that would prove crucial to the class action lawsuit. Sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time to witness history repeating itself, Esther told the assembled reporters. And sometimes you have to be there to help write a different ending. In the months that followed, the impact of the incident and Zora's response continued to ripple outward. National Airlines introduced a transparent reporting system for bias complaints, with quarterly public reports on their handling and resolution. Several other airlines preemptively announced similar initiatives. Medicorp's stock dropped 12% following revelations of their connection to Patterson, while Nexus Intelligence's valuation soared to $12 billion as their new initiatives garnered positive attention and additional contracts. Most significantly, 6 months after the press conference, Zora Washington testified before a congressional committee on discrimination in transportation and technology, helping shape new regulatory guidelines that would affect industries far beyond airlines. The final validation came in the form of a text message from Alexandra Bennett, sent the evening after Zora's congressional testimony. "You made the right choice. I wouldn't have had the courage to do what you did. Some compromises cost more than they're worth." 1 year to the day after the incident, Zora boarded another flight from Baltimore to San Francisco. This time, as she approached her seat in first class, the flight attendant greeted her by name. "Ms. Washington, welcome aboard. It's an honor to have you flying with us today." Several passengers recognized her, nodding respectfully as she took her seat, Seat 2A, the same position that had become symbolic of her stand against discrimination. As the plane taxied for takeoff, Zora glanced out the window at the Baltimore skyline receding in the distance. She thought about all that had happened in a year since she had simply requested the seat she had paid for, the lawsuit that was still ongoing, the congressional testimony, the new initiatives that were already changing lives. Her grandmother had been right, as she so often was. Our successes and our struggles are never just our own. What had begun as a dispute over an airline seat had transformed into a movement for accountability and respect that extended far beyond one flight or one passenger. And it all started because she refused to move from Seat 2A. What would you have done in Zora's position? Would you have stood your ground like she did, or taken another seat to avoid conflict? Comment below with your thoughts. If you believe more companies should be held accountable for discrimination, hit that like button. And if you want to see more stories of everyday people standing up against injustice, subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching this incredible journey from a disputed seat to a national movement. Remember, sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply occupying the space you've rightfully earned. In Zora's journey, we see how discrimination persists regardless of success or status. The most powerful lesson is that dignity is non-negotiable. When faced with injustice, standing firm doesn't just protect your own rights, it creates ripples that help others. Zora could have taken another seat for convenience, but by refusing, she exposed systematic discrimination affecting countless others. True change requires both personal courage and collective action. Success doesn't shield us from prejudice, sometimes it makes us bigger targets. However, it also provides platforms to create meaningful change. The lawsuit wasn't about one incident but addressing patterns affecting many. Remember that staying silent for comfort perpetuates injustice, while speaking up, even when difficult, paves the way for lasting transformation. Your voice matters, especially when others try to silence it. What line from this story resonated with you the most? Was it when Zora refused to give up her seat, or when she declined billions to maintain her voice? Comment below sharing a time you stood up against injustice. Your story might inspire others facing similar situations. If you believe more corporations should be held accountable for discriminatory practices, hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to hear more stories about everyday heroes challenging systemic racism and making real change in America. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that their dignity is never up for negotiation. Thank you for witnessing Zora's journey from Seat 2A to the halls of Congress. Remember, sometimes the most powerful act of resistance is simply refusing to move from where you rightfully belong.